Welcome to Real Rockford Files, for tales of the paranormal, supernatural, and the flat-out unbelievable. Today's stories will be a compilation of dreams, very strange dreams, split into two videos. The first video being just one dream. Some that I believe are actual abductions, and another that made me believe 100% that parallel universes exist and that we can access our other selves, even if by accident, as well as time travel. I'll be starting with that particular dream. Let's get into it. The dream starts out, I'm standing in an all-white room, shaped like an octagon or hexagon, and the walls look like the light in the room came from them. I'm standing with three other people, whom I don't know, yet in this dream, I know them well. They were my colleagues. We worked together on missions much like this one we were about to partake. We were all dressed in rags, something 1700s or 1800s timepiece clothes, I didn't know. Nothing too fancy, mostly poor man's clothes so as not to stick out for what we were doing. Our jobs were traveling back in time to specific times and past, to observe historical events, to report if things happened the way that the history was written. And if it was different, it was our jobs to correct the records. Apparently this trip wasn't to any big historical events, just a random serial killer that we had to confirm was actually captured according to history. I call him the tooth collector. The room is immediately flooded with the brightest, blinding light, and I can feel my body being pulled away from the room. Instantly, me and the other three were standing in ankle-deep water on the edge of a small river. It was nighttime, but early enough the sun hadn't fully set. To the side of the river closest to us was a small town, a very small town, no bigger than a single city block in modern times. On our side of the river was a small water mill. On the other side of the mill was the town's main road, and across the street from the water mill was our destination, a small inn/bar where the killer had a room upstairs. We go inside, and in front of us are about 6 tables, a bar in the back that goes to the left, and to the right was the stairs in the back right corner. Inside were a few patrons, including the tooth collector, sitting in the corner to our left. A barmaid was waiting tables, and the bar owner was behind the bar. We walk up to the bar, and one of my colleagues asks if there's any rooms available, which we already knew one was based on our knowledge of the previous history. I say previous because the events that unfold, I'm still not sure if things happened the way it was supposed to, or if our being there messed things up. The bar owner tells us yes, there's a room open. We pay the man and he tells the barmaid to show us to our rooms, since we paid for 2, one of which was directly across from our target's room. She walks us to the stairs that went up 6 steps, turn right, another 6 steps, turn right again, and our killer's room is the first on the right, and the barmaid shows me to my room, the first room on the left. I step inside my room while the barmaid showed my colleagues to their other rooms, then she went back downstairs. The 3 of them then came back down the hallway and went downstairs to order drinks in order to keep an eye on the tooth collector while I go into his room to confirm he is in fact our guy. I know exactly where to look. Among other items in the room that belonged to him was a small chest about a foot tall and 2 feet long, where he kept his trophies. I open it up and almost full to the lid were his trophies, human teeth. Scattered among them were the occasional gold tooth or piece of jewelry, but mostly teeth. This was definitely the tooth collector. I closed the chest and went back downstairs. I nod to my colleagues so they know I found what we were looking for. Now we just had to wait for the events of his arrest to unfold. I go to the bar to order a drink while we waited. The bar owner tells me he needs someone to go down the street with a wagon to grab some more barrels of beer, and he'd pay whoever goes and gets it. This was already different for the timeline, but I didn't notice. I just volunteered to get it as long as I get a free beer out of it, being that the money would be no good to me when I go back to my time. The bar owner said he'll give me free drinks for the day in that case and handed me the money to pay for the beer and told me where to go. Just a few buildings down the street and on the left. As I leave, my colleagues look at me strange, and I just tell them over my shoulder, "Grab me some more beer." I grabbed the wagon that was more like a rickshaw with a handle on each side. I lift them up and rolled down to the supply building where I paid for 2 barrels that were put onto my wagon, and I started back for the bar. When I was almost there, I see one of my colleagues run from around the watermill towards me from the direction of our arrival in the river. When he's about 20 feet away from me, he stops and yells, "I don't know why, but it's open. We gotta go now." It meaning the portal. And he turned around and disappeared around the corner. Well, I was stunned for a second. The portal wasn't supposed to reopen until we were done. I quickly snapped out of it, but not quick enough. I set down the wagon handles and ran for the river. By the time I rounded the corner, my 3 colleagues were gone, and the light in the water had disappeared. I was stuck in time. I slowly shuffled my way back towards the bar, staring at the ground. We didn't have a backup plan for this. It took months of planning to schedule a time shift. I got to the wagon and brought it into the bar. The bar owner thanked me and quickly took it away, and I had a beer in front of me in no time. I sat at the bar and unprofessionally gave the killer in the corner a dirty look while I chugged my first beer. He didn't notice, thankfully. I stared while thinking to myself, "This is all your fault. I'm stuck in this timeline. At least I'll get to see you taken down." I then relaxed and waited for the moment local authorities would come in and arrest him. And I waited and waited. It was supposed to have happened already. I figured our being there had changed history, or this was a part of history that was a lie. I quickly talked myself into a decision to interfere. If I was going to be stuck here, I'm not sharing this world with someone who I knew killed hundreds already. As I was thinking this, the barmaid had gone upstairs with a broom, presumably to sweep the rooms. I also noted that the tooth collector noticed this and followed up after her. The authorities were still nowhere in sight. I had to act fast or this woman might be the next victim. I scanned the bar and saw a young boy by the doorway, about 8 to 10 years old, peeking into the bar. I walked over to him, hoping I didn't scare him, but I'm normally good with kids. When I was about a foot away from him, I put on a fake posh accent and said, "Excuse me, good sir." He turned ahead to look at me, and I finished with, "Are you ready to be a hero?" Before he could finish nodding yes, I say, "There's a bad man upstairs in the first room on the right, killing a lady. Go find someone who can help her fast. First room on the right," I repeated, and the kid was off. I figured if I was right about the barmaid, I would still have to go up myself. So I go up the stairs, and when I round the last corner, I saw that the tooth collector had gone into his room, but the barmaid was at the far end of the hallway, sweeping a pile of dust in my direction. I walked up to her, stopped in front of her, and waited for a sound. Then I heard it, the hurried footsteps being led by the boy. As soon as I heard it, I grabbed the woman by both of her shoulders and said firmly, "Scream now." She needed no further prompting, being she had no idea of my intentions. She let out a startled scream, and I let her go and turned back to the end of the hallway and pointed at the killer's door, just as a marshal and 2 deputies came around the corner. I said, "He's in there," in a fake panicked voice. It must have been convincing enough because they opened the door to a surprised tooth collector who shouted, "Get your hands off me, what do you think you're doing?" One of the deputies was still partially in the hallway and looked in my direction, and then I said, "He bragged about the chest. Check the chest." The deputy relayed to the other 2 who already had the man at gunpoint to check his stuff. The second deputy walked over to the chest and revealed the horror inside. The marshal said, "I don't believe it. We got him." Apparently he knew of this killer's calling card. The victims were always missing teeth. The boy I had asked to get the authorities was at the top of the stairs, and the deputy in the hall pointed at me, and the boy said, "He told me to get you." Later, I was invited to the jail, and the marshal informed me There was a large reward to be claimed for this man's capture. I basically received a small fortune for finding this guy, enough to live comfortably for quite a while. In a short time, I had a house built on the edge of town, adopted the boy who helped me, married the barmaid, and started a family. For the next 15 years or so, my family grew until I had 4 children, a 20-something-year-old adopted son, a 15-year-old daughter, a 10-year-old daughter, and a newborn son, all of which knew my secret about being from another time, and all of them knew to keep an eye out for the light from the river. We were sitting down after dark, about to have dinner. We were waiting for my oldest son to get home any second. He arrived a little earlier than usual, running and out of breath. He ran to our dining room yelling, "There's a light in the water! There's a light in the water!" I couldn't believe it. The portal was open, and the look on my family's faces, I knew for the first time they finally believed me. I stood up and said, "It's time to go now." As I picked up the baby, they all knew the drill. When the light appeared, we'd all go through it together. No time to gather a thing, we raced down to the river, and there it was. The light was shining from below the water. It was still open, but there was something I hadn't anticipated. Over the years, the river had gotten deeper, so where the portal was located, the water was at least 8 feet deep. We stood on the edge of the river. I'm still holding the baby and holding my wife's hand, and the rest of the family hold on to each other on the other side of my wife. We braced ourselves and took the plunge. I felt the familiar feeling of my body being pulled away, and almost immediately I was back in the white room where I started, alone. My family, the same family I just spent 15 years with, weren't there. People were coming in the room with smiles that I was brought back, but all I felt was that I had just lost my family because they didn't come through the portal. That's when I woke up, fully in tears from the loss of my family from the dream. I felt like the dream literally lasted the 15 years that passed during it. Over the next few weeks, their names, faces faded away to where I couldn't remember them. But years later, and I'll never forget the way I felt about them, and I still miss them and hope they exist somewhere. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories. Hope you enjoyed.